Art Chat is made possible by the support of the Artistics Harmonies Association. Create your next aha experience with us.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Art Chat. My name is Linda Riesenberg-Fissler, and I am your host today. And I'm excited to have Gladys Roldan de Moras. Did I say that right, Gladys? Okay. Yeah. So happy to have her here with us. We're going to talk a little bit about how Gladys captures the Mexican-Spanish heritage that she has in her life. We're going to talk a little bit about all of that and her work and her accomplishments while she's been painting. This is the first time that I think Gladys and I have actually kind of met, even though it's over Zoom. But I have followed her work for a long time because her breathtaking images, paintings are just so gorgeous. And I've always kind of wished that I understood more. Why don't we start off with a little bit about your art journey and how you were drawn to paint and create?
Okay, well, as you might know, I was born in Monterrey, Mexico. I've been living here for the last almost 40 years, this beautiful country. And but all my life, I was attracted to art, all my life. And I wanted to study art. But I feel like I'm always saying this story, but it's the honest truth. But my dad was a very conservative man, and unfortunately had the idea that art was not for people that had much intellect, and he thought I had some. So he would not allow me. When I asked him, "Do you think I could do art?" He says, "Oh, no, no, no. Art is, you want to be a starving artist all your life or whatever." So he did not really encourage it. And I do come from a traditional uh, family, so I followed his, and so what I did is I went another route. And but every time I could, I would ask for classes. I can still remember the first class I ever took. And it just happened to be that my dad came for graduate school to the United States. So he was getting his PhD. And my mom had taken us to a little fair, and there was a little class, and I can still remember the class. We drew an old man and divided, into three sections, and we put this is how you do the eyes, and this is where you put the nose and the mustache. I remember he had a mustache. So I was always attracted to art. I even would request materials to sculpt, although I never went far, and I've always been tempted to go that way, but I don't think I have enough years to become a real good one. So I don't I kind of admire, but it's always in the back of my head, like, but I always wanted to take classes, and they would, take me, but I didn't do art formally. And even in my college days, in medical school, I was a scholarship recipient. So they had me work on something, and I remember creating out of wax all the models of the babies as they are in the womb, as they grow. So excuse me, always with the creative side. And it took until I got married. We got married, and my husband told me, "Well, why don't you just do art? I'll support you. Do art." And we were living then in Lubbock. My husband was a professor at Texas Tech. And I started taking even more classes, and I just went into it full time. And then we moved to San Antonio, and I got to learn about a wonderful school here. Well, it's an academy. I named it the best little art secret in San Antonio, and it just stayed with them. I think it's funny because I used to call that. Because it's a wonderful school where they bring in one amazing artist to give workshops. Yeah. And it's, a lot of people don't know about it, and the workshops usually fill up really quickly. And I was very lucky to have found that place and study under wonderful teachers there. And also, I was very lucky to be that I was able to teach there. And I truly believe this when I say it, that when this beautiful quote about when one teaches, two learn. I have learned so much through the years from my students, and I love them dearly. And if they only knew that I learned more about from them than they did from me.
Exactly.
So it's been a long art journey. I've had wonderful mentor, and I have teachers, and I've been doing this full time for almost 40 years.
Is
So
it the Copini? Is that how you pronounce it?
it's the Copini Academy of Fine Arts, yes.
Yes.
And it's here in San Antonio, and it's a wonderful place that taught me, exposed me to a lot of great contemporary artists, many of them who are my friends. And they keep bringing just wonderful artists. I just heard about they're bringing an artist that I really admire, Sushitra Bosley. They're bringing her in. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. I wish I had time to take more workshops because I don't. I really feel, Linda, that the more you paint, the more. In my case, that's what I think, that the more I realize I have so much more to study.
Yeah.
So I'm constantly reading and looking at my books and all of that.
Right. Exactly. So you grew up in Mexico and then moved to the United States. So that.
Yeah, it was kind of unusual. So I was born, and at 9 months, my dad was doing his graduate school at UT in Austin.
Okay.
And so we stayed here for a while, and then he worked for a while in Dallas. But at 6 years old, because he had a health issue, we had to go back to Mexico. Now, I must say, my mother is from Monterrey, Mexico. My dad was from Colombia. He was scholarship from the government of Colombia to come to Monterrey to study at the Tec de Monterrey, and that's how he met my mother. And so we went back, and from like 7 years old, 8 years old, I was in Mexico until I got married at almost 21, and then I've been here for almost 40 years.
All right. So
I'm 60 years old.
I'm 2 years older than you. So.
I've been doing this for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So let's talk a little bit about your heritage, because we talked in the green room, what I call the green room, before I started recording. We basically talked a little bit about, I think I said Spanish first, and then I remembered that you were from Mexico, and I introduced you as Mexicans, Mexican Spanish heritage. So let's talk a little bit about your heritage and the importance of that heritage to you. So, and then we'll talk about how you capture that in your art. So if you could talk a little bit about your heritage and what that means to you.
Well, I was born and raised, like I said, in Monterrey. And I feel very honored to be able to live here in the States, in this beautiful country, as a naturalized citizen. But, it happens with all nationalities. Sometimes when you're away from your country, it's when you reminisce about things that which you grew up, and it happens to everybody. I believe so. I haven't yet met somebody that doesn't have some fond memories. So when I was in the process of learning how to paint, which was years and years, I kept, going with wonderful instructors and that kind of thing. And I was trying, you take workshops, and then you worry about being a clone. You're trying to find your voice, right?
Right.
Because usually, you're never better than your instructor. Usually, I say that because there are many cases like the great John Singer Sargent that I think surpassed his teacher, right? That a lot of us know about. But anyways, so trying to find my voice, and I knew what I was attracted to, which is sunlight, is what I love to paint. And I live in a beautiful sunny city, and I was raised with a lot of sun, and I was studying my art hero from the past, which is Joaquin Sorolla y Bastida. I've been studying him since, I don't know, ever. I have a large collection of the books that were written about him when he was alive, and I'm very fortunate to be able to read them, mostly in Spanish, because he also did write in Valenciano, so there's some in Valenciano. But so I I was studying that, and I'm very attracted to the sunlight. And I remember asking an instructor, "What should I paint?" And he said to me, "Paint what you love, and you will find your voice." I never forgot that. So one day I was wanting to paint sunlight, and I was reminiscing about my growing up and I was very close to my maternal grandmother. I consider her that, sometimes I get quoted that she raised me. I mean that I learned a lot from her because I spent all the weekends with her, and she had a huge old house, and there was closets. My grandfather had already passed away, and I would go in and I would see all these beautiful charro outfits and hats and belts, and I can still remember the noise of the belts hitting the doors as I open. And it was one of those old closets where you would open the closet and the light would turn on automatically.
Right.
And my grandmother would know that we were in that closet because in the first floor, it had like a glass mural, that closet, and it would turn on, and she knew they're in the closet. So anyways, so I started thinking about that one day, and then one day I heard that there was groups of charreria, the national sport of Mexico, here in San Antonio. That was a surprise for me, and I thought, I want to go. I want to go paint those girls. I started to remember about the girls on horses, and I thought, oh, I go. So I went, and I was just really surprised, like many people are, that the national sport of Mexico, charreria, is practiced in over more than a dozen states of the United States.
Wow.
A lot of people
great.
don't. Yeah, they have. These are families and that have brought the tradition with them, and it's very admirable because they follow the rules and regulations de la Federación Mexicana of Charrería. That's the guidelines, the body that that controls it, and they follow them, and they compete in the states like we used to do in high school, like district and region and state. And then not only that, the best one and the national one of the United States goes to Mexico and competes with the best of Mexico. So these are really admirable, groups. And I started going there, and I started sketching, photographing, and to my surprise, I painted what I loved. And I painted a painting of escaramuzas. These are the girls on horses with the ruffles. That's what people describe them. And to my surprise, I submitted to a big competition at the American Impressionist Society, and I was beautifully surprised that I won Best in Show with this subject matter that I had just started to paint. And then people started recognizing me like I hadn't really put two and two together that I was actually doing Western art, because a lot of people don't really consider this as Western art, but it is not only contemporary, but there's a whole history. So the more I researched, I realized that I could bring into Western art something that I loved and I understood, and I loved it because it had a lot more meaning to me to know that my grandfather was so much involved in making, in the 1930s, this sport the official sport of Mexico. So there was that tie there. And it's interesting because back then when I started doing the subject matter, some of my family members that remembered my grandfather and how much he loved the sport and how he, tried to help it. They said, wow, we can't believe that the love of your grandfather for this came out through your art.
Mm-hmm.
It missed the generation. My uncles didn't really care for that. My mother was the one that loved it the most, but she got married, and my father was not in charreria, so it didn't continue through art. So I realized that I could portray this Western subject matter in the way it should, because without pointing fingers, but I understand it. I can read the guidelines. I can recognize when there are people that can that will paint a mariachi on a horse, or they will put that is not a charro, or they will paint a woman on a horse and they call it an escaramuza. No, there is a guides and rules, and every year I get the book and I have to print it out and make sure that things have not changed. But there is an old saying in Mexico that it says in Spanish, vestirse de charro es vestirse de Mexico. To dress as a charro is to dress as a Mexico, and you have to do it with a lot of respect. And just like great Western artists and collectors are very knowledgeable about the outfits of this tribe goes with this, and or of cowboys, this rifle, this gear, this hat has to go, this doesn't go. Well, it's the same thing with the charros. So I thought I can bring into Western art my love of this and my understanding, and try and do it the best I can, just like artists that paint Western art are very careful. To me, I see some things painted about charros. I mean, a lot of great artists do amazing charro paintings, but you'll find some things and I'm saying, oh, that's not correct. But I don't say anything. I just but
Right.
So I'm trying to preserve not only this tradition, but also trying to make people understand where it came from. Or like I recently did a painting of China poblanas. I don't know if you can see there, but that's a giclée. That's a reproduction of the painting, which I was very, very honored and blessed to have received the Prix de West medal for painting with that painting, and my first Prix de West, which I still say it and I can't even believe it. But I painted this China poblana because a lot of us here in the States, we know about the China poblanas, but we really don't know where it came from or what it represents. And so by painting this and putting them into what they really do in Mexico and what they represent, opens a dialogue of talking about, okay, what is the China poblana? Where did the dress come from? Why is it, that kind of thing. So I'm little by little trying to give a meaning to why, and then also a lot of people know, and some people don't know about this, but the American cowboy, it is said by historians, not by me, came from the Mexican charro. So vaquero is cowboy. The word vaquero. So and then if you go further back, then you go back to Spain. It's always So there is a continuity of all of this. So I am just trying to explain what I understand. Is like I get invited to to groups of people that are painting Native Americans or kelp, and I say no, I don't. I would have to go into deep study to be able to do this correctly, and I'd rather stick to what really calls my heart and to represent where I was born. So, and in a beautiful city like San Antonio, where the majority are Hispanic, So.
Right. Yeah, that's great explanation. I want to recognize also, and I believe I have this museum correctly, but I may not. You were just invited into the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum. Is that the correct museum that you've been kind of brought into?
The Prix de West, yes, that is the Prix de West, which I participated for the first time last year with 2 paintings, and to my surprise, I won the gold medal for painting. So I sit here.
Be a surprise, Gladys. You have such wonderful work.
When I sit here and in true humility, to me, I get tears because I was not expecting that. I can still remember what was going on. It's like surreal. Linda, I have been very blessed to receive many awards, but I can tell you from my heart that every time I received one, I'm in shock. because I only compete against myself. And this I tell to a lot of the young artists that I mentor. I tell them, you need to work on your craft, on learning and all of that, but stop looking at to what one is doing and the other one is, so you can find your true voice. Because not only does it get overwhelming, you get you don't find your true voice. So I sit here in the studio and I have a huge library. I'm always studying and reading and studying. And like I said, the more you paint, the more I realize I have so much more to learn. And so then I try and present what in that moment is my best work. And then I want to enjoy. I feel so lucky to be around these amazing artists, and I'm just like struck. Being there, because some I know, some I don't know, and then to receive an award is just, it's just something I can't explain it. I only compete against myself. I don't compete against anybody else. And I try and share as much as I can. I wish I could teach more because I truly enjoy it, and I love having people around me. As you probably know, it gets kind of lonely, right, in the studio.
Right, absolutely.
I love to have them here. So, but and this teaching makes you grow a lot, because you've got to really put into words what you're thinking. And, I just try and share as much as I can, because there were many artists that have shared with me through the years. And, you feel kind of like a responsibility of giving back. And I'm happy to do that. So
yeah, the first award that you won with the Charo is on a horse with the beautiful dress, and just laying so perfectly on there and showing. So I have that is etched in my memory. I remember that painting.
okay.
And yeah, I mean, it was gorgeous. And I was Kevin McPherson the judge.
Yes, and
Okay, so we're on the same wavelength. Yes.
yes, and let me tell you the story of that, because it's very heartwarming to me. So my dad was very traditional. He was still alive, and he would still come into my studio. I mean, I had already 3 studios by then I built, and he would come in and he said, "You should go back to medicine. What are you doing? You should go back." And he really thought it was the best for me. So whatever. So I had just come back from a group of women artists that we had gotten together up in Jackson Hole. And a lot of them were going to go, they were participating, and they were going to go to the American Impressionist Society jury show. And it was in Nashville, actually, I believe so. Was it in that? No, it was not.
It was in Indianapolis, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm confusing it with another one. And so so I had to come back. I was teaching because I taught for many years and I had responsibilities. But that night I had planned on, which I usually do, I said, I'm going to turn on some music in my studio. I was in my other house. I had not built this studio. And so the second floor was my studio. And I said, I'm going to put some music, get some coffee at night. And I'm I'm a bookworm, and I don't read the books, but I look at them, because I don't read all of the books. Because people say, wow, that's a big library. No, I have not read them. I look at a lot of them. But so I had all these books here, and I knew that was the event. And I was just getting ready, and the phone rang, and I saw it was one of the gals, and I thought, oh, they're probably calling me to tell me that they're having an amazing time, and that they're enjoying it, and I should have been there. And so I started and visiting with one of them, and then she said, somebody wants to talk to you. Now I had met Kevin McPherson a long time ago. I took workshops with him. I want to say like 30 years ago. And so I thought, oh, Kevin, and he's very, everybody loves Kevin.
Very personable, yeah.
An amazing artist. And he's, hi, Gladys, how are you? And he starts talking to me about my painting, and about I like this and that and that. And I was just thinking he was calling us a friend just to say hi and whatever. I hadn't realized that he was the juror, I had about it. So then he says to me, well, and I just want to let you know that you are getting the
Best in show.
this big award. And I'm like, what? And I just, like I said, I'm always surprised. So I hung up and I was overcome and I was streaming down, my face. And the only child that lived in my house back then was my son Rafa, who was performing. He's an opera singer, so he was performing that night. My husband was teaching graduate school at night, so there was nobody at home. And who calls me? My dad.
Oh,
Dad calls me. And one thing I can always say, my dad loved art. He loved art and he loved impressionist art. He had prints of so many different art paintings in the house. And so he calls me and he could hear that I was, I had been crying. And he says, what happened? He says, Dad, you won't believe it. And he says, what? And he says, I said, well, I participated in this and they just told me that I won the big award for the show. And he, all of a sudden, he starts breaking up and crying. And he says to me, I guess I realize that you were born to do this. And he says, you were born to this and I'm very happy for you. And so he acknowledged that this is what I was going to do forever.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
And some years later he passed away. And so having that, it's a little girl having the approval of I guess you would say.
Your dad.
Because I was always very close to him. They had a house next to me for all their life. So he was right next door. So I couldn't share this information with my son who lives in our house or my husband. And he called me. So I will never forget that. That was
that's beautiful story.
That was the first time I entered a competition, an exhibition with that subject matter, which really, that show, I guess, raised their attention to Western collectors, and they were requesting more and more because I had already been trying to paint my heritage. I was painting women with the traditional dresses, but in that precise subject matter, and of women, escaramuzas that we call them. That's the name of the women on the horse. That's when I brought it out, and I am just very proud or happy to know that I've put in a little bit of my 2 cents in making the girls known more than the guys, because usually the men were in the front of all the activities, and the girls were, okay. And little by little, now the girls have a really strong voice in not only in the sport, and some people just say that maybe it was because I've been pushing them. So I don't know. Who knows? But I'm very happy and proud of if that is the case of doing that. So
well, like I said, that painting is etched in my mind. I can see it. It's almost right up there. I mean, I can see Sargents and I can see Monets and Soroyas.
But thank you. I don't deserve being in those. But thank you I really appreciate it. Thank you.
So let's dive into the culture a little bit, because I want to learn more about this. Are there? You had mentioned different, and I'm going to use the word tribes because I think that's what you said. Are there colors that are associated with each of the tribes, or there's traditional wear that happens to be with each? I mean, how would someone like myself, who doesn't know much about that culture or that the tribes, try and figure out and see?
When you say tribe, are you talking about charreria?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's no tribes because there's no ethnic groups. It is all Mexicans can become charros.
Okay.
So there's no tribes. Now there is different groups, associations, and there's a little bit. It's funny because I'll be in Jalisco and they'll say this is the place where the charreria was born, and I'll be in Hidalgo and this is the place. So there's a little bit of where was it actually born? But no, there's no tribes, but there's groups that compete.
Okay.
Yeah, but
so are there colors associated with each group, or a certain type of traditional dress, or? No?
Oh, no, it's just like when you have band members and they're from different cities and they have different outfits, but they all have to follow guidelines, you know?
Okay.
So, like for example, in the charreria, you cannot paint, not paint. I shouldn't say that. When there is an event in the lienzo charro, which is like a cowboy rodeo, um, you there should not be in the rodeo in the lienzo anybody that is not dressed with the traditional outfit of a charro, and there are guidelines.
Okay.
For example, there are colors of the shirt that you cannot wear or paint a man in. Like very bright purples or stripes or pinks. And once in a while, some of these rules will change a little bit. So that's why every year they put out a guideline from the Federation of Charreria that oversees all of this. And I not only the charros and the escaramuzas have to pay attention to this, but as an artist, I have to, because I might be painting something that is wrong.
Yep, right, correct.
Yeah, but as you say, tribes, groups, yeah, when you see the women, it's a team of at least 6 to 8, or it could be even more, and they have to wear all the same outfits, because before they go into a presentation, well, not a presentation can be a little bit different, but a competition.
Okay.
They are judged outside of the lienzo, the rodeo, by judges that come from Mexico. And they need to check every single girl that is dressed up the same, following the guidelines. And then they have to check the horses and make sure that they are all also with all their, what's it called?
Regalia.
Yeah, hardware, whatever, all their outfit of the horses is also what is permitted. I remember one of these girls coming to me and telling me, they were about to compete. And they had just purchased these beautiful tassels that go on the harnesses and everything. And the horses look beautiful with these tassels. And they're very expensive because the tassels are made out of horse tail hair. I don't know.
Okay.
So she came over, and she was because there's always a captain of the group. And she was very upset. She says, guess what? And I said, what? They're not permitted. So we are getting points because they have they give them ratings, so and so many points because this is correct. And they start adding them up. But they said, we've been demoted these points because that is not permitted. And she said, and somebody suggested that we cut it off. Well, they're so expensive. How can we cut them off? So things like that. So they are checked before they go into competition. And if they are approved by the judge, then they can go in and compete. And when they go into the lienzo and they compete, they have to do all these different routines that are unbelievable. These girls are truly, truly great athletes. And if you ever have the opportunity to see what they do at high velocities on these horses, when they cross with the music in synchrony, and somebody said that it was like somebody quoted, I just read that, said it was like dancing ballet on horses. They're all synchronized because they have to be synchronized, but they're on high, and they have to control their horses, and they have to be perfectly and they do side saddle riding, which it's not that easy.
No, it's not.
So there's more than just looking pretty. And like the outfits cannot have anything shiny. The materials, it has to have so many layers of ruffles. It has to have the neck up to here, and then the outfit has to be a certain, the sleeve has to be a certain way. You don't just, and then they have got to have a hairpiece. The hair has to be pulled back. All the girls have to have the same earrings. And if they have something here, it has to be the same. So there's a lot of rules. So I try in my art to follow those. Yeah. I remember there's a wonderful trainer here, Jimmy, that I call once because I like to hire these girls. They come to the studio because
Yeah,
have
I see your dress. Yeah.
wooden mannequins when they're not here. Sometimes when I love to paint from life, but of course I use reference photos for a lot of these. Although I do take my push-out box, but sometimes I'll find a girl that I really want to paint, and I'll do little. I do a lot of apuntes, sketches, designs, and so I called Jimmy and I said, Jimmy, I'm looking for this girl, and I showed him. I sent him a picture of what I was doing, and he looks at it and says, Gladys, please do not paint that. And I said, why? And I said, see, this is like very long time ago. And I said, why? He says, you cannot put a sweater on that girl.
Oh.
Yeah, because they cannot wear a sweater. They wear a special cordon. I can't remember what the name is, but it's kind of like how would it translate? Like a cape. It's a beautiful, very beautiful Mexican cape. But this girl happened to be walking, and it was kind of cool, and she put on a sweater. I was paying attention to the rest. I did not pay attention to that sweater. And I said, oh my goodness. So see, through the years, I've been learning about this.
Right.
So I try to be careful. So there's things like that, and you have to follow those in order to represent Mexico the correct way. So,
and I'm assuming that those guidelines are with trying to kind of bring into the culture of today, but not lose the culture of yesterday.
Exactly.
So,
Preserve. Yes, and they are not bringing anything synthetic that the horses wear. Not bringing, like they have to wear the traditional Mexican buckle. Not a lot of charros on their off time they like to use the Western American kind of cowboy. Can't wear that. So there's a lot of things that we have to pay attention to.
Right. I think that's so great.
Yeah, for example, you will see they'll have parades, and in parades they can do it different. They can adorn their horses and that. And sometimes you'll see the girls with dresses, but they're not representing the sport of the escaramuza. They'll have their shirts down to here, short off the shoulder. Yeah, but that is not an escaramuza. They're doing a parade. So you paint them and then say this is the sport. So what I'm trying to say, Linda, is that, I paint what I understand. And, just like a lot of amazing Western artists do what they do, they understand all of the Native Americans. And boy, that's a lot to study. I'm going to tell you, I am researching you mentioned tribes. There are still many tribes in Mexico. And I have the good fortune of having a very dear priest who's a missionary for 40 years in the northern part of Mexico, the most dangerous places. And he lives among the tribes, the Pima tribes, and the many tribes. And they do still, because they're so isolated in little tiny towns, they still have a lot of the traditions that you see that are very similar to the Native Americans in northern Mexico. Some of those tribes have the American counterpart. I mean, they didn't, they still went through the borders. So I have been inclined to someday research, if I have time, into that, but I'm not sure because it's a very dangerous place of Mexico. Yeah. Very dangerous. I mean, hardly anybody goes in there, and my dear priest, he says, "Will you come with me?" And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know, but it's fun to see where who he's around. But yeah, there's many tribes all over Mexico. But this is charreria, so
yeah, it's wonderful that you're passing on that tradition, and I really like that. Like I said, it's very memorable to me, and maybe. I need to learn a little bit more, and you've helped to educate me with that too. But I think that's something that your art is doing, which is causing you folks like myself who don't know a lot about it, exposing us to that, and then the gorgeous colors and the way that you paint. All of that all goes in there. So I followed your art. Like I said, I still have the one in my memory. I have a number of yours that you paint. Every time you put one out on the social media or whatever, it's like, oh, Gladys just painted a new painting. So I get very excited about it, and I've been wanting to have you on the art chat for a while.
Well, I'm honored to be here, Linda. Thank you for thinking about me. I'm really honored.
Yeah, I admire your art. I admire your tenacious ability to go in that deeply to rodeo and that tradition and the capturing them correctly, because I think that is important to do that. So thank you for your hard work with that.
I should say that one thing that's very important for anybody that's trying to paint this genre is that not to confuse the charro. Charrería is a lifestyle, okay?
Yeah.
The charro with the mariachi has nothing to do.
Okay, so it's mariachi more Spanish then?
No, mariachi is just a musician, and the outfits of a mariachi, which is the one you see, playing at, has really very little to do with the charro.
Okay.
So that's also very different, and I hate to say that I've seen a lot of people paint what they call charros, and they're mariachis. They're not charros. So so I just stick with in trying to.
Yeah, I believe artists have a responsibility to understand what they're painting and yet convey that properly to their audience. So I guess I can understand the frustration, because and it's not coming across as frustration, but for lack of a better word, you understand this. You've done all of this years of research and keeping the guidelines in your head and making sure that you're portraying them appropriately. And then, someone who takes, I just like the way this looks and names it wrong, doesn't do that background check. I so get that. So, I mean, I think it is important. I think artists have a responsibility to portray exactly what that heritage and history is saying. So,
and I think it's mostly in Western art, because we are telling stories that, all artists.
It has a past. It has a history. Yeah.
Yeah, but in Western art particularly, we have to be very careful with that, because I can create my own, whatever in my imagination, and any other thing which I love to paint too. So I. Without noticing, I realized that I have been painting mostly the women on the horses, and I feel very, very happy to know that to do that, and it just kept keeping, being attracted to them. And people, charros, will tell me, "Well, you got to start painting more of us." And I know I need to get back to Mexico because I want to do some little bit of a kind of like historical. The Mexican version of what Western artists will do, historical. I want to do it. Like, I had a phone call from somebody one day, and they said, "Well, Pancho Villa, would you paint Pancho? Can you paint the, Pancho Villa, whatever, in some kind of situation, whatever?" And I said, "You know what? I could, but I'm not going to paint him if I don't know that he had a reason to be there." Right. In front of whatever he wanted, this gentleman wanted. I said, I am, because I'm trying to paint things that really have some kind of a historical value. So, and I just hope and pray that whatever charro is ever watches this, doesn't say Gladys, or he can always text me or call me to tell me if I'm doing something wrong. And I appreciate it. I will call charros. I will call charros and I will ask them, "Hey, why is this?" Or, I recently called a great historian, Mr. Pepe Martinez, and I asked him, because I have some of the outfits of my grandfather, and I asked him, and they're all made out of suede. They're like almost 100 years old, but they have silver buttons that have a lion head. And, and it's real silver, and they're lion heads. And I thought, why is there a lion head? I did not understand. And then he went through the history. He says, "Well, you remember, Maximiliano de Habsburgo is the one that kind of promoted this outfit, started developing, and he was European, and he wore those buttons. And so he said, please don't touch them, don't take them off. Promise me you're going to keep them there because they're very valuable historically. Because now the the charros will buy, all of these new issued one, and these are the original. Well, I didn't know. I was always curious. Why does he have a lion when we're talking about, this is charro, because his hats have some have a horse, or they can have different animals, whatever, but because they have like silver pins, but a cow, or even a cow. So he explains to me. So I'm always learning. I don't know all of it. I just try and, learn as I make sure that I'm doing it correctly. So
Right. You made a comment about going to a workshop and being involved in workshops. And it's kind of I would say pet peeve of mine, is that when folks go to workshop, instead of trying to understand the technical things of what an instructor is doing, they do, I love a number of different artists, but, I love your work, Gladys, but your work is your work. My work is my work. I don't want to paint like you. I want to understand what you're doing technically to achieve a skill. But unfortunately, I think that there seems to be a miss. It's like, maybe I can't afford XYZ's artist's work, so I'm going to paint like them so that I can hang it in my house, or, something like that maybe going on. I don't know. But
or buy the demos. I remember that many years ago that there were people that would sign up to buy the demos. I just remember when you said that. Yes.
Yes. And I think you've done a wonderful job of finding your voice, and that evolving over the years as you become more and more. It's almost like you guys are joined at the hip, with that history, and it becomes your voice. And I think that has also spurred in you a exploratory portion of your work, where it's like, well, let's try this, so you're not as afraid to step away from a particular technique to achieve a different outcome in the painting. And I think that you truly have that voice going on, and I like I said, I would not attempt to paint what you're painting, first of all, because I don't have all the knowledge and the history of it. But there's this is what Gladys does, and it's filling a great void. And I think, even with all of the wonderful other cowboy artists, Western artists that are out there, this is a particular field of understanding and culture capturing that I think needs to happen. And I just, think that it's wonderful that you have developed your own voice so strongly, and you're such an advocate for it. And I appreciate that. I may not understand all of it, but I am learning a little bit. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show, was because I wanted to capture that. I always look at Art Chat to be kind of a historical record of our times. So, maybe 100 years from now, somebody listens to this Art Chat and becomes more interested in this particular culture and tradition. So, So, I would like to also have you kind of urge people or talk to people about how you, maybe in a little bit more detail, and how you went to these workshops and didn't get caught up in painting like the particular instructor that you always, it's hard to do. It's hard, because a lot of folks can't talk about a certain technique without their voice entering into that, which isn't wrong, but it's just their voice. It's the way that they paint. We should paint the way our voice is trying to tell us to paint.
Yes.
Through that.
Let me see. I must say, because I've been there, I used to teach, so I could afford my supplies, and I could also afford going to workshops. And the first time I taught, I realized how much I enjoyed teaching, because I really, truly love teaching. It's just I don't have much time anymore. But what I have learned through the years, and what I have told my my students about workshops and classes, is, because I've done this, is that find a teacher, an artist that is a good teacher that you feel like, or maybe you are one of those that learns by looking. Some people learn just by watching.
Mm-hmm.
But make sure that you find a vein of a certain artist that you follow, that you know that this artist is following these veins, because there's many techniques. There's beautiful California colorists. There's others that tonalists. There's what I call the followers of Richard Schmidt, there's many artists that follow those veins. Because what happened to me, and what has happened to many artists, and through my years of teaching, I have had people that were able to purchase all the art supplies they want. But then there was people like me that you can just go out and buy 20 different tubes and 20 different mediums and all these different brushes and all of that. So I would end up coming from a workshop with amazing artists that to this day I truly admire. And I would love to have some of their art,
Yeah.
But it wasn't what I wanted to do. It wasn't, for example, I love very realist art.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the patience to paint realist art. So I don't, as much as I love it, even though I've tried it, I'm not going to do it. But anyway, what I was trying to say is that because you go to these different workshops and you spend money and your trip, and you have to fly there and you got to ship things, and then the tuition and all the materials, make sure that you ask around, kind of know what that vein comes from. Because you can usually find artists that come from this school or that school or whatever. Find the one that really calls you, and follow those. Otherwise, you're going to come back from a workshop with all these amazing techniques, which are amazing, all confused, and with 100, by the time you get in your studio, you have 100 tubes of colors,
Mm-hmm.
So that is one of the things that I always tell friends and students back then, or whoever asks me, I want to go do this. Well, and also research if the person is a good teacher. Also, it doesn't hurt to ask that, right?
Right.
But then also I say, go to a workshop. And I used to say, if I can come out of this workshop with 3 amazing information, like technique wise or whatever, that's a big winner. 2 is also a winner.
Mm-hmm.
But come, do everything the instructor tells you to do. But then come home and don't think that first of all, don't think that you're going to come back from a workshop with a finished painting. You should come with knowledge. And if you are like me, you come, depending on the instructor, you come back inspired. Because just the workshop brings you to this different level. If there's an admiration for for him or her, whatever artist. But come back and then use those techniques or what you learned in your own voice. Right. But then, Linda, the truth is, it took me years and I don't want to say I've learned, but to try and learn the craft, and then to go into what I really loved,
Right.
Find it, like if pets is your thing, paint the most beautiful pets you can possibly think you can, but find something you love, because there's nothing worse than having to paint a commission of something you really, you just have to do it because you got to pay bills or whatever, to me. So that's my little 2 cents. And, very fortunate. We have such amazing artists out here at Contemporary that are so giving and so wonderful. I mean, once in a while you'll find a bad cookie, whatever, but most people are so nice and they love to visit. And, I try and mentor people in the evenings. I was very fortunate to have been for a very short time at the on board of American Women Artists, which is doing an amazing job of pushing the women's art in many ways. Unfortunately, I realized I admire the board tremendously. But they are a very hardworking board, and I just could not give them the time they needed with the amount of responsibilities. And I get invited to a lot of things, and just like shows and galleries, which I'm honored that they would consider my work. And I wish I could say yes to everybody, but it comes to a point where you have to learn to say, I'm sorry, I can't deliver. And some people would get upset, but you just can't spread yourself so thin, because then your artwork is
suffers. Yeah.
Yes. And not only that, one of the hardest things for me of this profession is deadlines. Deadline by deadline. I think a lot of us, so when you overcommit, you are literally living deadline by deadline by deadline, and so it's hard. To me, that is very taxing on me, because mentally I get kind of a little bit, anxious as to I should be doing this, or simply feeling guilty that you're out on, you planned a vacation for so many years and you go and I should be in the studio. Although, like my mom would come and say to me, anywhere I go, I take one of my pochade box. I have a favorite, but I usually, and she says to me, why did you come to work? Just come and enjoy. And I said, Mom, it's not only what I do as a job, it's what I love. Can't travel, can't be in these places and not have my pochade box, but it's still trying to enjoy the journey,
Yeah.
Try to enjoy the journey, because I'm now a grandmother. I have now 4 beautiful grandchildren, and sometimes it's hard I was talking to another friend, a wonderful, amazing artist, and if she ever hears this, she'll know I'm talking about her, but I'm not going to mention her. But I was talking to her and I was saying, how do you manage being a grandmother and not being a grandmother that bakes cookies and knits sweaters, and which I did when my kids were growing up, but I don't have the time anymore. But how do you manage, not that guilty about? And she said to me, well, Gladys, I understand it, but I came to terms a long time ago that my grandchildren will remember me as a great artist, and maybe have beautiful paintings that they can come see somewhere someday. And I thought, okay, well, it took the edge off a little bit of what, because, a question I get asked a lot is, well, I have children and I want to be an artist, but I don't have the time. And I've been there. And I said, if I could do it, anybody can do it, because I'm not super somebody, But I always give this advice. They say, well, I got to take my child to this, pick him up from school, and then, or daycare, and then take him here, and then take him there, and I'm just driving, and I do anything, and I'm waiting in the car. And I said, you know what I used to do? I used to carry a whole library in my van. I had a van. My daughter, who's just, she's married and all, she's older, she says, remember, Mom, you always had your books. You were always waiting. I'm constantly reading any time that I was able to,
Right.
Yeah, but I must say, without the love and the support of my husband, my family, I would have never been able to do. So it helps to have your other half, support you, and 100%. People come to the studio and they say, "What a beautiful studio!" It's just large. It's not, it's just large. And I said, yeah, I could not have done this without the love and the support of my husband and of all my children, because since they were born, I have had a studio, and they respect it.
I'm always constantly finding something to study, color-wise or whatever, value-wise, how the sun hits a certain angle, and all of that kind of, how can I portray fall if I don't know the angle of the sunlight, on the trees, and all of those different types of questions.
Yeah, and you can get me to start. You can get me start talking about books and the beautiful treasure books that are out there. Oh my! I have some. I have some amazing books that I cherish. Now, a lot of them I find are PDF, but back then, when the hunt was on, looking for the books, oh, that was so. I got to tell you this. I have one of my treasures. It's not an instruction book. I do have a lot of amazing books about oil painting that are were highly sought out, and I think still are. But I have one, and I like to say this, one of 200 hand-signed copies of Cecilia Bowes' autobiography.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and how I found that is when when eBay started.
Ah, okay.
Way back then,
Yeah.
I don't know how many years ago, and how I ended up with that book. And I remember I paid $200 for that book, and I opened it and I looked at it. Oh my goodness, it's a Cecilia book. But no, I have so many books that I think they're still classics, and I think that they're, people should still be studying, like, Carlson's book of landscape paint. And when I got Carlson's book of landscape, I went a step higher. I went into Birch Harrison, his teacher, who wrote the book, and then he wrote that book.
Kevin, when I studied with Kevin McPherson and worked for Kevin, he told me I had to read Edgar Payne's book. Okay. So he always told me, he says, read it in bed. And I was like, what? I understand why. I mean, this is a hard book to get through, but
Yes.
it's amazing technically, understanding that. So how many times do I pick that book up and go, okay, something's not working, and I start going back into that book? But he gave me a good gold star because I did get through the book and made it to the end. So
He recommended me a wonderful watercolorist, as you said also, and I got the second, not just the first one, the second. But yeah, he recommended us a lot. He is such a funny guy and a wonderful teacher. I just brought
he
a
was,
lot of,
or is, I should say. He's still with us. He is a wonderful teacher. Yes.
that's when I remember somebody telling me in one of his workshops, they said, a workshop usually takes the personality of whoever is giving it. And boy, that was a fun workshop. Always fun and really amazing.
Yeah, it took me a while to get his sense of humor. Like, we'd be talking on the phone and he would say something, and then I would have like dead, because I worked for him, and it's like it'd be dead silence on the other end of the phone. You all sitting here, Linda? I was kidding. Oh, okay. Yes.
You know what, Linda? I just realized you are that Linda. I didn't even
Yes, I'm that Linda.
from way back then. I like, we know art is so isolating. I sit here. I have I do a lot of YouTubes, but I do a lot of music. I've come to realize right now. It's funny, just recently, that when I am listening, I like to listen to conferences. I also listen to a lot of spiritual, religious things. I like, but I realize that I can advance much quicker in my painting if I listen only to music. Music that does not have words. But when I am listening to a conference, either in English or in Spanish, I slow down. So I'm trying to make that decision of being just, just playing music.
Yeah. I can't. I know a lot of people who listen to TED Talks or,
Yes.
Books on audiobooks, that kind of, and I'm like, how can you follow the plot of the book while you're painting? I mean, I totally get lost in the painting. If I'm painting an ocean, I'm hearing the sea voices, the sea sounds and the wind. And if I'm painting a landscape, especially in the Blue Ridge Parkway, I'm thinking about maybe the hike I was on, some kind of that type of stuff. If I have people talking at me while I'm trying to paint, I can't handle that.
I can. That's why probably I slow down.
Okay.
I think now I will not watch a movie or TV, because then we're visual. I want to see.
Right.
I just recently watched. Here's a little ad. Okay, I just watched the most amazing movie. I think reminded me, although it's Polish, it reminded me of Zorn paintings, Anders Zorn paintings, and it's brand new. It's a beautiful, heartwarming movie. It's in Polish, and it's called Forgotten Love. And I had seen it because I have Netflix on my here on my, and I thought, oh, let me see this, and I put it on. I thought, no, I don't want to miss one scene. Of course, in this, you got to read the translation, because I don't speak Polish, but yeah, I don't watch movies, but I do listen to a lot of conferences. Yeah, I love to listen to conferences from Spain, especially from Museo del Prado. I try and listen, since I read so much about Sorolla, Uh, he's my favorite artist for many reasons, not just because of the artist he was, but because of the family man that he was. There's a whole other side. It's just like when you study Sorolla,
Mhm.
it's or maybe when you have studied and read about him for so long, it's hard not to appreciate, and a lot of people don't know this, how important his father-in-law was in his developing of his style and
Oh,
his
no,
sense
I
of,
didn't know this.
yeah, and his sense of uh, light.
Hmm.
His father-in-law, one of the greatest photographers in that time of Spain, that had him coloring negatives, black and whites. And
Hmm.
he loved Mr. Garcia. He loved sunlight. And Sorolla was a very young guy, 13, 14, when he started working for him. And I have always thought, because I've read so much about him, that more credit should be given to him than is given to him. But anyways, I'm sorry. I can get
I
sidetracked
agree.
easily, and I love to visit, and I'm sorry. So,
Oh no, that's fine. Although
is
I
that,
have had you for quite a while. We've been chatting at least for an hour or so. So,
yeah.
but I enjoyed having you on the program, and I enjoyed getting to know you a little bit face to face, because like I said, I think we've been kind of ships passing in the night type of thing. But yeah, so thank you so much for being here. If there's anything else you'd like to say, go
No,
for it.
just I hope I didn't bore whoever gets to watch this, but I thank you for thinking about my art. And like you said, I hope our paths cross for real, so we can
Yeah.
meet in person. And this is a wonderful thing you're doing, and
Well,
can't
thank
wait to
you.
start listening to more of what you've got out there, and so I can.
I
And
appreciate that.
and
So,
whenever you're in San Antonio, give
no.
me a ring. Yeah. I forgot to say this. Maybe it's important. Um, I am very, very happy to announce that I will be inducted into the National Cowgirl Hall of Fame, November 14 in Fort Worth. And I did not know this, because it all goes back to just painting what you love,
Mm.
that it is the first time a Mexican-born person is inducted into the Hall of Fame. So
Well, congratulations, and it's very well deserved.
thank,
So,
thank you.
very much. So
Thank,
keep painting. I keep looking forward to seeing them. If you get a chance, please visit Gladys's website. Gladys, you want to tell us what your website is?
Yeah, it's a mouthful. It's my name, Roldan de Moras. And but you can follow me on Instagram as Roldan de Moras, or you can also look up Facebook at The Art of Gladys Roldan de Moras.
Yeah.
And so, but thank you so much.
Yeah.
This has been a lot of fun, and I hope we get to meet.
I hope so too. Thank you so much, Gladys. Everybody, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.
Art Chat is made possible by the support of the Artistic Harmonies Association. Create your next aha experience with us.